back. I'm sorry, but
No problem. Oh, hold on.
no,
Okay,
I
we're
see us
live now.
still.
We're live
Okay.
now. Here, let's do the
So,
intro again. I'm so sorry.
No,
okay.
no. Thanks, Craig, for catching it.
All right. Welcome, everybody, to episode 8 of the podcast Unlimited Wisdom with Robert Hollis. I'm Craig A. Jackman, along with Matt Hollis, and we are so glad to have you with us today. Today, our topic is what would I say to my younger self? So let's get started. Matt, Robert, welcome. And this is a great topic, especially since this whole week you have been discussing, Robert, what you would say to your younger self.
Well, thank you, Craig and Matt. It's always fun to do podcasts with you guys. I know we'll go on forever on this subject. Where the idea came from is sort of like "Dear My Younger Self," is sort of a concept. My son Kyle, he's still living with me and mom, and he's starting to make decisions about his life. And I just thought, wow, if there's anything that I could share with him as a father, it would be ideas that I wish that I knew. And so one of the things is I just started doing videos on it. And I just thought that we could discuss this all together. One of
Right.
the things that I thought that was really powerful when I thought, of my younger self, you know what I mean? It's funny because I looked up some of the best answers to this question and even did a chat GPT. And, people again that are all focused about, they say money isn't everything, you know what I mean? But poverty isn't everything. And so it was pretty interesting that the number one thing, sort of like in Back to the Future, if you guys remember, it's like when they went back there, all of a sudden, one of the characters, I forget that guy that used to call him always McFly or whatever, but
Marty McFly.
Marty McFly. But what he did is he went back and the bully, I mean, actually got a hold of all the scores of every game. And so when he went back into the future, of course, he knew who was going to win the Super Bowl. He knew who was going to win the World Series. And because he understood sports betting, um, him in the future after going back was he was still a scumbag, but he was a very wealthy scumbag. So we always say that money doesn't buy happiness, but we also know that poverty doesn't either. And one of the things that's very unique is when I searched the internet and everything about what people have said, what they would say to their younger self, it was like, take everything you have and invest in Apple or
Not a
a
bad
deal.
idea.
Yeah. So
Or
that might
Microsoft.
that might take
Right.
care of your money situations, right? But one of the things that I learned from my mentor too, Roger Penske, was how do you know that? You know, I think up to that point in my life, if someone told me something, I just took it for granted. I took it for granted what they said. Um, I didn't know that they were probably adding something to it, like Whisper Down the Lane. And so I've been doing another number of videos you guys can look up on YouTube. And, one of them was, is everyone a liar? And I really think that's bold, but it's the truth, So when you're listening to other people and maybe you don't believe so much in yourself, you don't trust yourself, you don't, haven't learned to be able to tap into that inner you, then it's like, we call those sheeple. And we see them all over the world where these people are just blatantly just following what another person says and never ever took a chance to actually ask anybody, if this is true. And I'll say one more thing and then open it up to you guys. So I brought that up to Kyle today, you know, and I'm still going to find this guy. I'm so there used to be an HBO series or Showtime series, and it was a guy that was a comedian, but he's a very well-known actor. And I thought that the series was like, politically correct or something. But this guy used to do a stand-up comedy at universities. And one great example is like, of course, we hear, you know, uh, we know that there's not a Santa, sorry kids, or, you know, the tooth fairy, the Easter bunny, whatever we want to talk about. But I said to my son, I said, there's this new thing I just seen an interview with Michael Douglas, and Michael Douglas is coming out right now with a time period. He said he's never done a time period, and it's Benjamin Franklin. So I watched him
Mhm.
with the short interview, and they go, "Well, what'd you learn most?" And he said, "Well, first of all, Benjamin Franklin only quit school at second grade, and but yet he was one of these incredible writers and write poems, and of course the Declaration of Independence and stuff like that. Guy turned it out to be pretty good writer for not going to school." And so they asked him how he learned to write, and he said, "It's easy. You read books and you know how to write." It's like, sometimes that Henry Ford comment, if you think you can, you can. If you think you can't, you can't. But the story about, again, I want to do research on this because I asked Kyle how much he studied history. And after they made the Declaration of Independence and signed it, they all realized immediately, as the British was coming after them, that there was no way they were going to win this war by themselves. I never heard this before. So the founding fathers talked Benjamin Franklin into going to France. It took him 3 months to get there. And his goal was to sit down with the king of France at the time and basically do what we're doing right now with Israel and the Ukraine. He went there to say, "Listen, would you please allow us to take as much stuff on the boat as we can to defend ourselves? We'd also like money, and we also would like your help." And he said that he didn't realize and never ever heard that we probably wouldn't have the United States today if France didn't help us.
Hmm.
That's a little different than the history that I know. And I apologize to all the French people that hear this, because my whole life I grew up that, the French were pretty much pussies. You know what I mean? They weren't going to defend themselves. They were just going to roll over. And all of a sudden, when it came to us defending them in the world wars, um, there wouldn't be a French if there wasn't the United States. And that's why they gave us the Statue of Liberty. And I went, "Oh, so we were just paying them back for helping us." So it's stuff like that that people buy into, that really make a definition of their whole life. The way I thought about France was really different after that interview. And the guy that I brought up that used to do in front of universities, he asked every kid, and these were kids in their last year of college, last year of university. And he was in Harvard and Princeton and all these Yale. And he just simply asked the kids, "So when we got into the war and British were attacking us, who was the individual that rode on horseback for almost 4 days, going to every village and little city, screaming, 'The British is coming, the British is coming,' so everyone could grab pitchforks, whatever they have, and they all could start marching toward Boston to make sure that this happened." And all the kids went, "It's Paul Revere."
Right.
There's a story of it. And he said, "Do you guys realize that history was written by authors that really wanted to proclaim how good they could write, how good they could write songs, and how good they write poems?" And he said, the normal guy, the guy that actually did it was, you know, Cumberbatch or something. It's crazy. I mean, Craig and Matt can Google this, but his name rhymes with nothing. And so someone said, "Well, listen, who else did that?" And there was another soldier that was named Paul Revere that didn't do the thing that he's proclaimed to do. But to think that you go your whole life. So I thought it was really hilarious, you guys, that, he constantly was telling people. And that's one of the biggest ones. I know there, we'll talk about a bunch of, but question everything, because I know this is a bold statement, and you know, I'm just saying it. But 98% of the stuff that you think you believe, that you think is true, where that's where that comment come out, where If you know that you know that you know that something's what you believe in 100%, you know it, and it's not true, when do you want to know? And a lot of people immediately go, well, I'd like to know right now. And yeah, like there's a lot of things, and one of the biggest ones too is that to have someone sit with me during one of my darkest moments, and all he said to me is, he goes, so what are you going to do when your knee heals? And I said, hopefully I can go back and get my same job. And he asked me, why would you get a job? And I go, because I need money to pay for bills and stuff. And he goes, who told you? Who told you that the way to make money is through a job? I was like, what? And then he started telling me all these people that have financial freedom, whatever that goal is for you, and they never got a job. And I just thought, I bet you Benjamin Franklin said it was in that category. You know what I mean? A lot of the founding fathers were actually entrepreneurs, and
Yeah.
they're the ones that were worried about getting taxed by the British the most. It's not the
Right.
poor individual. Most poor individuals get taxes and they actually get money back from the government. You know what I mean? So it's a constant group of people that are like, how could I give less to the government? So
Right.
that's a cool opening to what would you say to your what would you say to your younger self? So either one of you, man, jump in.
No, I mean, I think it's one of the really cool things about doing this, especially with you, Dad, is like obviously a lot of the stuff that you'd say to your younger self, I've heard some of those things because you've said them to me and shared them with me as I've been getting older. And I find it really interesting now being 32, like some of the things that I would tell my younger self, right? Like in a lot of ways, it's hard at my current space because when I think back to my younger self, and we were even talking about this a little bit before we got the podcast started, but it's like you're almost going, okay, if I told my younger self to avoid those problems, would I have learned how to deal with those problems or deal with myself through those problems, right?
So deep.
And you get into this place instead where you start being kind of grateful for the shit that you've been through to a certain extent because of what it's made you now, at least if you're proud of who you are now, right? And obviously that's a whole nother thing. Right, like I that's something I'm still learning at 32, how to be proud of the things that I've accomplished or who I am currently, right?
Right.
Because when you say what would I say to my younger self, I remember when we were all hanging out with Hannah and mom and everyone, and Hannah had that, well, what would you say to your older self instead? Like, think of the things you
Deep.
would say. And
Deep.
that's sometimes where I live more is like where I would be in the future. I try my best not to think back outside of just trying to mine the wisdom out of it,
Right.
Mhm.
right? Do better. Because I'm so aware of how my brain works and I'm aware of the longer I spend on the path, it's normally not a good thing.
Right.
Uh, at least for me, it's different for some other people, but I tend to look at things that I haven't done and not focus so much on the things I have. So, the advice that I would give to my younger self at this stage would be, obviously the same thing you'll hear a lot, which is like, give it a rest, like calm the fuck down. It's
Con
not,
Yeah.
yeah,
Keep
it's not a
going, man.
race. Yeah, it's not a race. There's a certain amount of fear that you have because you're unaware of the amount of time that you have here or the things that you have to accomplish, and the internet has just made that even more so the case. Like we're a lot more aware now of the outliers than we were before,
Right.
right? Because they only used to be written in books or we would see them on TV or in movies. Now we're aware of people that even get small little incremental bits of success that we want, like fitness success or travel success or financial success. And so it's so much more in our faces now. So I think what I would say to myself younger is that there's no amount of time where you're supposed to accomplish something or not. Like
Right.
I was also seeing as well, like a bunch of these actors like Morgan Freeman or Samuel L. Jackson. Samuel L. Jackson did Pulp Fiction when he was in his 40s, right?
Right.
So, like, a lot of people don't know that Samuel L. Jackson's career really didn't start till he was in his 40s. And there's a lot of people that really haven't taken off, whether it was writing books or making music or doing any of these types of things, acting, directing, that didn't have it all together till later anyway. And
And
so I think that's the trap that young people tend to fall into, is like thinking the expectation is so high. And I think it's good to remind yourself that that expectation, if you just switch it to taste, like, I have really high standards and tastes. My abilities haven't matched that yet. My skill set haven't matched my tastes yet. And your goal is to keep building that, through
right.
action. So that's the advice I would give.
Yeah, and
Yeah,
the only thing I wanted to add to what you said is, when you run into people that are just a little wiser, they get a little older, they really, really look back at all the things that they thought were devastating at the time that they had happen. And I remember a large group of very A-listed actors and directors and producers and songwriters were all hanging around, and somebody asked Tom Hanks, what is the best piece of advice that he's ever gotten? And
Hmm.
he goes, "This too will pass. This too will pass." And as soon as everyone went, "Oh man, that's a really, really good one." And he goes, "Yeah, but people don't understand it the way I understand it because of my highs of highs when I was doing movie after movie after movie. Everything's clicking, man. Um, it never, I always was thinking, okay, I'm at the top of my game. No one can do more box office than me. I'm getting awards, and this too will pass."
Yeah.
And
I
so,
that's deep, because that the
oh yeah,
awareness of that as well, that everything, including the good things, pass. And it's important to not like grasp for the past too much, to live in the present. And I think that that's a huge piece of information. Yeah.
yeah.
well, I, Sue, my girlfriend and I were having that exact kind of discussion
Wow, that's
because,
cool.
yeah, we were thinking, it's like, okay, what would it have been like had we met, let's say, 20 years ago?
Wow.
Okay. I
Wow.
mean, because we always, we're fine. We love each other a lot. And, we're just enjoying this time together and getting to know each other. And who knows how things are going to go in the future. I'm looking at the positive. But had we met 20 years ago, would we still be in the same position and the same thought and the same mindset today? And based on all of our experiences of the past, would we be open to how we feel about each other today, as opposed to meeting 20 years ago in our younger selves? Now, it took, at least the way we talk about it, and it comes up every now and then, we kind of just
Sure.
enforce it and things like that. Um, had we met then, would we be where we are? Would the events that have led up to this point in time where we met nearly 3 years ago uh, happen? Number one. And number two, would they, if they did happen, would they yield the same results as to where we are today? And you can always look back. It's always fun. 2020 is always hindsight.
Oh, always,
Or
always.
I should say hindsight is always 2020. That's what it is. But would we be able to say, this is what I would do had we gone back?
So
And
true.
maybe even, okay, look at the movies that have come out: Back to the Future, Avengers, Endgame, and Infinity War. They had to go back to do things to make them up to date, touching those timelines. I
Right.
mean, yes, it's a fantasy of everybody that, hey, if there's that one point in time, or like Matt, you've even brought up this, the butterfly effect.
Yeah.
If we step on that ant, is that ant going to cause us to make a completely different change from today down the road or not? Um, Everything that we do today has to be embraced today. And what we can do today, if we can, better ourselves. And you've said this before, Robert, take things one step at a time, day
Right.
by day. I love the phrase that you've even come up with. Get gooder 1% every day. And by the end of the year, you'll be 365% gooder than where you were
Right.
when you started. And that's what it's all about. Is so what would I tell my younger self? As of today, do what you did before, but be aware of what you've done, because that is experience, and experience is a valuable teacher, and take those experiences and move forward with where you are today.
Right. I would say that, how many movies it'd be like when we talk about being an imaginator and how much imagination plays with, who we are and who we become and who we attract. And so I really love that statement that I've heard before where, things didn't happen to you, they happened for you. And really, people have difficulty with that. Of course, if you think of the negative things that happened in your life. See, we all want to embrace the positive things that happened in the past. Why would we want to change those? But we go back and we look at the um, the struggle, or what I always call the test. If you don't have a testimony unless you have a test. But there's always this thing that I've heard through all the very, very wise things that I've read and learned from, is that there's this thing that we just have to have resistance. We
Mm.
really have to have resistance to grow. And it's everyone understands that about muscles. You know what I mean? Any kind of physicality that, but when you find people that have done stuff that everyone is in awe of, if you go back and you read the story of their lives or you read their biography, there they are. There's the resistance, there's the struggle, there's the loss of their company, there's the loss of someone that was close to them or a relationship. It's like I like I remember one person said, it's pretty obvious that none of us get out of this journey alive. You know what I mean? And it's and so you look at the things that happened to you, as bad as some of my childhood was. And I like, again, it's easy to look at it after you're mature and go, I wouldn't change a thing. I wouldn't change anything. And but on the other hand, I have two brothers. And I look back when we were taken away from our parents, they were put in a different setting than I was, and in a different foster or an orphanage than I was. And man, things did not turn out well for those two, even to this day. And sometimes people want to make fun of the homeless, and you go back and really try to talk to them, and it's like, hey, I'll give you money, I'll put you up in a home, I'll take care of you. And sometimes the answer is no. No, because that would mean that I would owe you something. That would mean that you're going to tell me ways that I have to be and how I have to act. So you always hear that these homeless programs will go, hey, listen, we'll take care of you, but no more drugs, no more alcohol. You got to go through therapy. Okay, just leave me alone. Because everybody wants to help an individual, but there always seems to be, here's something that we need or expect from you. And so, one of the things that, the another one, other than, geez, does everybody lie? You know what I mean? Is, man, if I could go back and tell myself that, like you said, Matt, just freaking chill out. It's not a big deal. There's
I'm
things
still
like,
telling that to myself now. Like it never changes, right?
I
Like I
think
could
we
see
all do
myself
that.
10 years from now still being like, chill the fuck out, Matt. Like I
yeah,
don't
and
understand why you're
this urgency, and we always get to see stories on this, right? Um, but you hear about some of the best entertainers on the planet that died young, way too
Mhm.
young, enough for them to write songs about it because they didn't know how to be with them when they weren't the life of the party or the person on stage or in a skit in a movie that was making everybody laugh their asses off. They didn't know how to handle that time being alone and not around people. You know what I mean? And so the one thing that I really realized is not only is our mind such an incredible thing, but man, it's so destructive. It's so destructive and it beats the shit out of us. And I was laughing at a person that reached out to me today um, because I could hear her thinking about her thinking. So she said, I sent Terry a gift for her birthday. And I was thinking, what she's going to think about that. And I don't want her thinking this way, and I'm just like going, man, this concept that it's just so important for us to be people pleasers and want to be felt love and feel appreciated and significance. And there's all this stuff that, where, I heard one person say, man, just don't put on the mask. Just Jim Carrey does a whole movie about that, and it's like, would you please stop pretending and acting to be somebody that you're not, just to get approval, just to get love, just to get acceptance or connection? Because the problem with that is, like you are saying, Craig, with Susan, you know, if you guys would have met each other back there, were you authentic enough
Exactly.
like you and Susan are now? Because I think, not think, I know that when you say, this is who I am, this is what I'm authentic about, and instead of fitting, Matt said it really good, I believe, on an inner circle that we have, is you're constantly looking for these parts of the puzzle, you know what I mean? And you're trying to fit in
Mhm.
somebody else's puzzle. And it's like, I'll do everything. I'll act different. I'll do stuff different. I won't say these things that will trigger you. And I would believe that a majority of the people out there, and that's a big statement, a majority of the people are basically pretending and acting to be someone that they're really truly not. So that would be one that I would say to myself, learn
Mm.
to love yourself now, learn to accept yourself for who you are. And that's why people love people like Seinfeld and Larry David. You know, he's in his last episode, he said something pretty funny is he goes, I was cordial, and people go, what do you mean? And he says, I think I did a good job based on how much I don't like people. I think that I was really cordial.
Yeah.
And so someone paid him for an appearance to just show up at his birthday party, you know? And they goes, well, what do I got to do? And he said, just be cordial with people. Well, Larry David being cordial to people, is like there was something that set him off
Uh,
immediately.
right. No,
Those one
that's
little
that's
those
the
little ticks,
tell.
yeah.
You knew because you
Yeah.
watched all those seasons that that was a bad thing from the very beginning, right?
I don't know if you guys are watching it, but man, they really nailed the last episode.
I
Holy
I
cow.
haven't watched it
Oh, the
yet, so
Curb Your
the
Enthusiasm?
end of Curb. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
they put so many cool twists in that ending. Um, I'll tell you this, he definitely made up for the Seinfeld ending, and that's what it was all
Oh,
about.
wow. That
Yeah.
that
Eh,
says a
that's
lot.
funny.
That says a lot. I mean, okay, I did not watch Seinfeld that much, but the ending was like, "What was that?"
Yeah.
So if yeah,
It was actually a part of defending your life. Is
true.
what the end episode is. I mean, he's got a bunch of jury people and he's up there and
Oh my
fucking
god, I
people are
didn't even think
coming
of
up
that.
after all the shit he's done all over the years.
That's great.
You got to hear other people's perspective about who he was. It's
Hmm.
good.
I
Oh
love when
my
stories do
goodness.
that though, because it's almost like a reflection. You get to do those flashback scenes. It's like,
Mhm.
Yeah.
well, what the different perspectives or whatever it may be. Yeah, I feel like if you had that, obviously watching Defending Your Life, if you had that play out that way, like when you're at your end of your life, it's interesting because when you watch that movie, there was some elements to it that I just didn't expect, right? Like
Yeah.
obviously like being a nice person, but there was also elements where they're like, you didn't really stand up for yourself here, right? Like
Right.
Oh my gosh,
you
yes.
weren't really yourself in this situation, right? You
And
were
also,
pessimistic.
yeah, also behind that is our ability to lie to ourselves and justify that we did what we did at that moment in time because you just didn't understand all the other circumstances that were happening. So it's not only do we have fear and we make mistakes, and sometimes those mistakes hurt people. See, I knew that when we mastermind, we would come up with this because maybe some of the stuff that you would look back in the past is when, I did not treat that person right. I didn't. But at the time, here's all the justification and bullshit excuses and lies that I told myself that this was okay to
Mhm.
do at that point in time. And you know, damn it, again, the good and the bad, you know what I mean? You look back
Doesn't
and
that doesn't that also come from the upbringing and the way that others have influenced the way that we are up to this point in time? Because I
ah,
mean, yeah, I know that okay, I remember in California they had this ad campaign about first 5 years for kids. And I did a little bit of research on that. And okay, the Jesuits also were very into teaching the young people that followed their way of thinking that the first 7 years of a child's life are so influential for what the future will become because
right.
they retain that. They're still building, they're still growing, and they're still very, very impressionable. And so and I know we've talked about it too before. It's like we have to give ourselves grace for all of the things that have happened in the past and in even the present because A plus B equals C, meaning all of the things that we have experienced in the past have given us what we are, who we are, and where we are today. And the only thing that we can do is live with it, understand it, look at it, evaluate it, and move on. And hopefully, if it was a bad issue, never do it again. If it was a good issue, do it again because we've got the experience. And if it was not much of anything, then just kind of, okay, put it in the back of your head, think about it, maybe put a little check mark on it to come back to it later. But the point is that the sum of our current life is basically all of the things that we've experienced in the past.
Yeah, when you think about that a child has really influenced their first 7 years of their life, I'm like, I can't even believe I'm here.
And you're a classic example, Robert, of
Yeah.
somebody who has taken all of those issues that have that in many ways could have crippled adults in their later years and turned it into a positive. And
Yeah.
that's the nice thing is that people can do that.
And I even think of things, I can easily look back and see how my childhood affected my first relationships. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
Because of course it ended up in a divorce and that was an awful thing. Now you're constantly saying, I really don't think I can do anything correct. And but one of the things is again is this concept of being able to understand that, I've worked on myself enough that now I can, for the first time in my life, look at my past, including my childhood, as a blessing. I always heard this whole thing about, every cloud has a silver lining kind of thing. But I just really honestly thought that was a bunch of bullshit. And and even this concept, I don't think I've ever discussed this either, but during a lot of hardships that happened to me when I was young, is you know my my just brutally saying this, that I wasn't too happy with the creator. It just, I always looked at it like being, on the wrong side of the tracks. What if I had different parents? What if I, didn't have to go through all the stuff that I went through? And then the thought goes where you don't understand, is you can't lean on your own understanding, is if there was something that created me, and God makes no junk, whatever definition you have of God, then how would he allow this stuff to happen to me?
Mhm.
That was really difficult for me
And that's
because,
a question that a lot of people ask of
yeah,
anything.
and it's like, and still to this date, not that we're on this subject, but I've been able to go back and take 2 steps, which a lot of people don't ever get. And that's not only forgive those people, not of what they did, but just to forgive them so it doesn't poison me anymore. But also being able to take it to the next step where I know they didn't get an owner's manual because I didn't get an owner's manual. And even though they made some really awful, stupid decisions, that I now mentally believe in my heart and soul that they just were doing the best that they could. Could they have done better? No freaking doubt. No doubt. I have to accept that I not only forgive them so they don't poison me, but I also thank them for making the bad decisions that they made, because it ended up putting me on a different journey, a different path that made me want to learn this stuff. And I say this not only about my parents and the people that raised me, my first wife, ex-wife, but also um, my first bosses, my first mentors, because I tell people all the time, my second mentor was and it really a better mentor than my first one, which was Roger Penske, because I got to watch in a period of 5 years everything that you can do right to build a large group of people that are happy and productive and living their dreams, to also how to totally destroy that. So in live time, I got to watch a mentor go all the way to the top and all the way down to the bottom. You know, he got written up in the Inc. magazine as being the fastest growing privately held company in the world. And 4 years later, it had the same article in the same magazine called the fastest falling star.
Ouch.
Wow.
So it's not only how do you go from zero to this that fast, but then the next article is how can you go from this big to nothing, to the government having to step in, take everything that he owned, and made sure that he would never do any kind of marketing business ever again. Um, Very interesting, because you
And,
see the, go
if
ahead.
that didn't happen, Robert, would you be where you are right now?
No doubt, I would not be.
Exactly.
So I got to see the things he did wrong, and now I'm going just like my parents. Some of my homes that I grew up in is like, man, I do not want anybody to feel this way, so I'm not going to treat them that way. You know what I mean? And everyone goes that. So I was thinking of another thing to throw at you guys, um, because I've been thinking a lot about this. Right? Is this whole concept of gratitude, and not only gratitude, but also this whole concept of unrealistic expectations, and changing those expectations to appreciation.
Hmm.
Now, I'm not aware of a something that does personal development, including religions and everything out there, that doesn't talk about this concept. When I was young, because there was different mentors there, like Napoleon Hill and all the good old ones, but they always had this one that I haven't seen the word used very much nowadays, and that is your attitude. Just listen, if you're going to learn something, you better do it with the correct attitude, because if you don't, you're just wasting your time. And so I see a lot of people nowadays when I run into them, they're they have so much unrealistic expectations. They just believe the world owes them everything. When I was brought up, not saying my generation is better because it's not, but it's like my generation was like, hey, Tommy got a bike. And it's like, good, go get a frickin' job and get a bike. It's like, really young in life. It's like, you want something? Yeah. Then go get a frickin' job and do it. And so I think about all the stuff that I did when I was really young, like going out to farmers and ranchers and picking rocks out of the field and, taking trees out and pulling the roots out. This is all stuff that we did when we were really, really young, because people usually only showed up one day for that kind of job. Like, hey,
I'm
what are you
sure.
going to do all
Yeah.
day? You're going to pick up rocks and put them in this trailer, and you do that for an entire day, and you're covered with dust. You sweat your whole day. You're exhausted. Everything hurts on you, and the guy hands you $10, and it's like,
Oh God. Yeah.
oh man.
Yeah. It's at that time you feel like,
Yeah.
oh God, I accomplished something and I got
And
paid for it too.
yeah, and if you went back to, geez, when would that be? That would be the 70s. If you went back and worked 8 hours, what would you get paid? It sure wasn't cash. You know what I mean? It's probably a couple of dollars an hour.
Mhm.
So let's say it was $16 instead of 10, but then they're taking taxes out of that. You know what I mean? So $10 underneath the table was stuff that was pretty exciting. I don't ever remember complaining. I don't ever remember anyone that was there that got that money was pissed off that they got $10 for picking rocks all day. you know. So go ahead, guys. I know that I've been on a roll here.
No, the
Go
one
ahead,
thing
Craig.
when you say that is you bring up like why aren't apprenticeships a big
Ah,
thing? Because then you actually learn. Now, I know in colleges, at least when I went to college, and I think they still do this program, was intern programs, which in a sense are apprenticeships.
yeah,
But the nice thing about an apprenticeship is that you learn what you need to learn to get things done. And I know you, Robert, especially share that kind of concept with everybody
yeah.
because if you gotta go through the steps. You gotta take it one step at a time. And yet in today's society, a lot of people think, oh no, I got it right now. Boom. They go out and they do it. And it's like it
Get the
fails.
degree, and then expect to get paid 50 grand. Yeah,
Exactly, and
it's
it's
like
not that way. That is the one thing that AI will not take away from us is experience. Again, I'll go back to experience. You need to start with step 1, and if there are 30 steps to get to the end result of what you want, you can't go step 1, step 2, step 3, step 29, 30. There's a reason why you got to go from step 3 to step 28 individually to finally get to step 30 to get everything done.
yeah.
It is so important to follow the proper procedures because you could shortchange yourself, you could shortchange others, you could have that. And there again, it does come up unrealistic expectations because you think it should happen, but because you didn't take the steps, it didn't. And people who relied on you, who thought you could do this, are thinking, wait a minute, did he know what he was doing? That's why success leaves clues. And we can go back to you in saying that you followed the steps, you made your mistakes, and you keep taking those
Still
similar
making
steps.
mistakes.
Yeah, but we learn from those mistakes and we course correct so that we can continue on that positive path. I think Abraham Hicks says getting into the vortex. And when you're in the vortex, it feels so good. But you got to align yourself with the frequency of the vortex that you need to be in so that you can move on that forward path. If not, then you still got to tune your dial. You still got to
Right.
adjust into or uh tacking the sail, setting the sail. I think Jim Rohn would say you got to set your sail for where it is that you want to go. And yeah, the wind's going to blow you off course a little bit. Maybe instead of going to the shore, you got to go right, but you can't go right because the wind's blowing in the opposite direction. So you tack left and right so
Right.
that you can finally get there.
Craig, the one thing about, and I want you guys to definitely talk about, the concepts of gratitude versus being constantly pissed off in expectation. But you reminded me, I downloaded a story that I've heard many times, and it's really based on ego. All right. And so this ship is a big giant freighter, is moving through the water. And all of a sudden one of his mates, sailors, come to him, and he goes, um, there's a can you see the light? There's another ship. And right now, based on our course, we're going to collide. And he says, "Well, get the guy on. Get I." So he gets on there because the sailor couldn't tell him to move, and he basically told this, other guy that he was communicating, that he needed to change his course immediately. That I think this was better. Uh, the story's coming to me, and this guy was like the largest battleship that the United States military has. And he says, we can't change our course fast enough. You need to immediately abort and change your course. And he goes, if you don't, we'll just blow you out of the water. And so all the other sailors are really, really impressed. And the voice came back and forth back, and he said, um, I really appreciate that you're an admiral and that this is the largest battleship you ever is, but you're talking to a light tower. You know,
Keep going, Robert. I know where you're going with this, so
yeah.
keep going.
And so this guy just was reaching out to him saying, this is to stop you from hitting land and destroying your ship. And I'm in this tower, lighthouse. There it is. I'm in the lighthouse, and I'm not changing course. So you just do whatever you want.
It's
But I just thought,
actually impossible.
yeah, yeah. It's like, so here he was puffing himself up with ego that I'm going to get this guy to change what he's doing. And it's like, no, you better start changing course immediately. But I just think, I think we pride ourselves. Maybe that's not the right word, but I think you guys understand. It's like, the right fighters. I look back at my younger self, and I look at not only the way I treated people, but the way I felt afterward by getting in some stupid conversation about being the right fighter. And I go back there, and I remember, I can't say and express in words how proud I am of Matthew, because I could see that instant shift in him. And he even told me the book that he read. You know what I mean? He goes, Dad, when I read this book, I just went, you know, the goal in life is to achieve the things that you want to achieve, and have everyone think that you're a pretty cool and likable person, and that you're there to help them. And everyone's not constantly behind your back, calling you a freaking jerk. You know what I mean? You're an asshole. Is that guy's a total right fighter, or she's a right fighter? You know what I mean? And it's crazy how we'll not only believe the stuff that we believe because of the people we hang around, but then we uh, fortify that and justify it by wrapping a group of people around us that feel the same. And then we
Mhm.
get in this constant mentality that it's us in this little community that's fighting the rest of the world that is wrong. You know what I mean? And it's
Right.
like, golly, so please, I know we're always masterminding.
Yeah, no, I'll jump in. Like I think one of the things that's really interesting about gratitude and a lot of that stuff in general is just how much it requires active thinking instead of inactive thinking. Like, in a lot of ways, our minds will just default back to the areas that they're the most comfortable with. So if those areas are thinking areas, less feeling areas, less present areas, then you're automatically going to go to those places. It's just where your mind's trained to be. So like for me, gratitude and a lot of those things, and similarly with what I would say to my younger self, comes from the place of just taking a breath and not thinking so much. Like as I'm listening to you guys as well, like there's this whole element to me now where my mind will like trail off and like go off into these trains of thought. And it's like, well, I could add this, I could add that, I could add this. But then I take a step back and I'm like, is that valuable to the conversation in the same way? Is that necessary? And I think those pauses that you have, at least for me being an extrovert, someone that talks before they think a
Right.
majority of the time, has been massive for me. And that's what I would give my younger self for gratitude as well. Is it's like if you just stop thinking so much about so many things and spend more time feeling and present, you probably will have a lot easier life. And I found that in my older wisdom, the older I get, is that the life becomes easier the less you think about it, like so much. Like
Yeah,
it's
and
important
the
to know
and
where
the
you're
and the
going.
part and the part about well, how do I stop thinking? For me, it's always a challenge and something challenging to me that I need to learn new skills and be a new creator of that stuff.
Mhm.
Uh, and when I'm focused on creating, um, I'm thinking about creating. I'm not thinking about uh, unrealistic expectations. I don't need to spend a lot of time beating the shit out of myself because I didn't do things a certain way or I should have did them already. I think that when people get the aha moment of whatever that is, like Maya Angelou said, just understand if you look at your life, when you know better, you do better.
Mhm.
It's just really that simple. Sometimes people ask me all the time, what if I could give one piece of advice to anybody, what would it be? And my deal is you got to learn to ask for help. You it's very, very, very difficult to change the direction of where you're going in the journey that you have if you consistently keep thinking your own thoughts over and over and over again. So as soon as you hang around people that have evidence, that they've been able to help others, it's fascinating to me the little things that they can say to get you to go, what?
Yeah,
A-
those
All you
paradigm
need to
shift
do,
moments.
all you need to do is just question yourself. And me, the biggest motivators for me is consistency of watching other people win. If I were going to tell people, ask for help, but it's me consistently searching for and finding um, hero stories of people that went through crazy stuff and they're winning. And of course, we're gearing up right now for the Olympics. And, they interviewed a guy this morning. And I mean, this guy looks like Andre the Giant. If you guys didn't know who he was a wrestler. But this
Mhm.
guy was like, I really, truly haven't seen this big of a guy in a long time. And they ask him why he's excited about, and he goes, well, my goal is to be the person that sets the record for winning 3 gold medals in the shot put. And I looked at the size of this guy and I'm going, if there's anybody that can throw a big heavy ball of iron further than anybody else alive,
That's this guy.
right? so
His
so he's
chances are
already
pretty good, is
won.
what you're saying.
Yeah, he's
Yeah.
already won 2 back to back. I'm
Mhm.
always fascinated by the old things that the first Olympics were wrapped around. Throw this spear, throw this ball.
It's always strength
Yeah.
competitions or endurance competitions, just
Yeah.
because like we're obsessed with these two different versions of ourselves. One that can endure a lot and one that has the strength, you know what I mean, above all
Right.
else. And I think like
Right.
every time the Olympics show up, it's interesting because like you were saying, you watch people succeed at things. And I think one of the things that we focus on a lot and why we maybe like fear certain aspects of failure is that we focus so much on winning and don't focus on the grace of losing or learning from your losses. And like
Learning.
I
Mhm.
think that's one of those things too that's like it's interesting because you'll see people that are excited that they got a silver medal or excited that they got a bronze medal or that they're able to just compete in the Olympics, right?
Right.
These are people that maybe are from countries that didn't even have a chance to win. They didn't have the programs or things to win, but they got that moment and they took advantage of it and maybe they did win and it's one of those stories, right?
Yep.
But
I
for
Cool
them that
running,
is a
the
win.
Jamaican bobsled
Yes.
team on that exact example.
That right, that bronze medal is a win. You know what I mean? And I think we focus so much on the tippity top, right? Even especially when we're younger, right? Like you want to be the best of the best and you think that you can be, right? Not that that's not true, but I think you disguise it somewhat as accomplishment for others instead of accomplishment for yourself. At least that's what I did. So it's more determined based off of your surroundings, what you're accomplishing, and less about what you want to accomplish. So I think when you watch people actually go after what they want to accomplish and they do it, it is incredibly inspiring, right?
Yeah.
Oh my
Like the
gosh.
draft, the
Yeah.
WNBA draft just went on, right?
Right.
And we've been watching Caitlin Clark.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah. I thought it was pretty interesting that she not only was taken first by Indiana, what where she played, but I thought it was pretty funny. She as the number one draft pick for women's professional basketball will make $76,000 her first years in the WNBA, and the number one draft pick for male 4.4 million. And I was like,
So crazy.
and everyone can get upset at that, but it really comes down to marketing. That if you have X amount of people that will show up for a men's professional basketball game than a female's. But here's another funny thing that that we're gonna see rules changed, right? So the way the Olympics do basketball and other sports is you got to show up to try out. You have to show up to get on the team. You just don't get put on the team. So we always hear about, like Matt said, just making the Olympic team, my God, or being one of the people that were good enough to even get asked to try to get on a team. Well, uh, Caitlin Clark, the last game that she played to win the national title was on the same day that they had the tryouts for the women's basketball tryouts. So she missed it. And everybody's like, you got to be out of your freaking mind if you don't put her on the team. But it's like, are the rules the rules? Are there, so do you make an exemption for her and do you have to make it for the other girls? What I don't know. I don't know. You know what I mean? That that's this constant thing that we
Mhm.
constantly go a little crazy with because there's the rule makers, there's the rule followers, and then there's the rule breakers.
And we see that today in politics.
Right.
Well, I was gonna say it's not abnormal for us to make exemptions for people that are exceptional at what they do. I think
Right.
one of the interesting dynamics about what you're talking about is why wouldn't we?
I know.
It's
It's like,
interesting
oh,
because there's certain aspects of the system that are almost like decayed in a point because when you're looking at people that truly are exceptional at what they're doing in life, it would be in our best interest to lift them as far as we can to
duh.
accomplish those things, right? And when you're talking about competing on a world level, yes, there's exemptions for people that are that good. Of
Yep.
course. If you
Oh my
were,
gosh.
you know about them, right? Because people will move heaven and earth for you if you're good at what you do, right? Like you'll see people um excel in any art form or any sport or anything like that and you'll watch a whole team begin to surround them to amplify them. And what's so interesting is now in today's day and age, we all need to be equal, right?
Yeah,
That
it's
equality doesn't even really exist. Like it's especially in these things, right?
right.
It's like if you're exceptional at something in life, you can play piano, you can play Mozart at 6, right? You're exceptional at what you do. You shouldn't be doing piano classes with beginners.
I
You should be doing piano classes with the
know.
best of the best, right?
Right,
Based on your skill set at that time is what you're saying.
Yeah, and I think AI will really help with this, but like identifying those people that really do excel and lifting them up is something that should be evolutionarily a good thing for us to do. We're picking the best of the
right.
best and sending them
Yes.
forward. But I think it's become such a issue now for anybody to get kind of a leg up in any way without then asking the question, well, why doesn't this group, or why doesn't that group, or why doesn't everybody get that leg up, right? Realistically, the system has never worked that way, and it never will. The
It
system's not
it
built for that level of
unfortunately
equality.
unfortunately, in my opinion, when you try to level the playing field for all people, there's nothing out there for the people to um, want to dream and imagine that they could be that number one person. I remember, the first time that I seen that would be another thing too. What would I tell my younger self? What I tell my younger self is celebrate everyone. Celebrate everyone. Uh, love everyone.
Great
You know what I
advice.
mean? Because of this competitive world that we sort of grow up in, you can see the division in everything. And it's like, I used to always joke where people would say, "There's what's your favorite team?" And people would say, uh, the Vikings, the Minnesota Vikings, and any team that can beat the Patriots. So so there was always these spoilers of whatever team that you love, that you follow, that you're excited about, and you're really, really upset at the team that consistently stops them from making it to the playoffs or the Super Bowl. And so, I just see in this day and age that I would tell myself not to be so competitive. That there's two ways to play the game. There's when I came up with this thought of putting videos, including this one, together for people that don't have someone to listen to that helps them. Um, this consistency of constantly complaining about other people and constantly constantly complaining and getting in with a group of people that are constantly complaining, constantly saying, "Oh, woe is me." You just become who you hang around. So if you always are around this group of people, where the people that are actually got lucky, who's really happy about the person that won the lottery? Every time it gets up to $1 billion, it's like everybody wants to win. But when we find out who won, what do you hear? The same thing. Oh my God, the people always in that area win. You know what I mean? It's never my 7-Eleven that wins this damn thing, or like one of Matt's favorite shirts, Come and Go.
The come and go places.
Hey, Craig, that's a real place, man.
Yeah.
No,
Yep.
he's aware. It's funny. I saw that shirt
The
on
Quickie Mart.
Jackass way back in the day, and I was like,
Yeah.
I need that shirt. So
Well, of
But
course,
shows you
maybe
my
it could
sense
be
of humor.
considered in and out over here on the West Coast.
oh, there you go. There you go. Hey, side
Too
note,
well known.
side
Yeah,
note,
that's true.
Now I'm
total
hungry.
side note, you guys. Um, I think it was on Good Morning America where they did an interview with the person that owns In and Out.
Mhm.
Do you guys know that it's the daughter
Yes.
Yep.
of the father of the father? It's like,
Yeah, I think
so
it's third generation now. Yeah.
yeah. And
And
My
it's still
gosh.
privately held too. It's not like a
Multi-billion dollar,
exactly.
she owns all of it, no investors, no nothing. And I
Mhm.
was just like, dang, man.
Honestly,
No,
that's to me the American dream right now. Like
yeah.
to me, the American dream for me is to build a business that's privately held and no one owns it but me,
And
Oh,
you have
and
complete
the
interesting.
control
other
over it.
people. Well, I just think once you bring in any forms of investing in any forms of trading, capitalism does its magic of ruining the company in
Yeah.
that sense. I think capitalism was built perfect for the system I just stated. Like let the best win,
Yeah.
right?
Correct,
Let them
correct.
all compete and everyone will, but once it becomes, oh, like for instance, uh Tesla just laid off 10% of their staff again. And obviously layoffs are going to become more and more so the case over the next couple of months and couple of years. But uh, it's always interesting to me when you see companies have record profits and then lay people off. It's like it goes back
Yeah.
to that publicly traded thing that we need the numbers need to be bigger than they were last
Mhm.
quarter, last year at this time especially. And if
Right,
they're
'cause
not,
you gotta feed the investors their investment and their profit that they have
and it just
supposedly
cannibalizes the
earned.
company. It cannibalizes the ethics of the company and the people that work there to the point that then the company is more fueled by the money it's making people and less by what it makes, which is like why you can see a bunch of cyber trucks now getting recalled, and the build quality of them is shit in comparison to the other cars because they rushed them out. But that's because they needed to. Everybody had paid money
Matt,
for them and
yeah,
all these
Yeah.
things. It's interesting.
yeah, Matt, not that we plan anything when we get on podcasts, but as you were saying that stuff, do you know what I was thinking?
What?
How do you know that?
How do I
Because
know? How do I
because
know about
because
the?
this is my younger self. This is one of the things that I would tell
Mhm.
my younger self. I was telling, uh, um, LinkedIn just came out with their top companies,
Yeah.
and they interviewed all the employees. Guess what was number two as the employees saying, without a doubt, it's the best place to work?
What?
Amazon.
Sure.
And you
Mhm.
reach out to everyone that's on the internet and they would say bullshit, bullshit.
Exactly.
Jeff Bezos, billionaire, asshole. People are can't take pee breaks. Uh, it gets so freaking crazy. But yet, when the employees are asked, what's the best places to work? Amazon now went by Federal Express and UPS. They're in the top 5 companies to work for based on employees saying that is the best. See, so whenever I hear, you know, stuff like,
I was talking more not about the specific company of Tesla. I was talking more about the system that currently exists and how it, just because you brought up In and Out and how privately held it is,
right,
one
Right.
of,
right,
to me, that's why I said it's the American dream, because the American dream, I feel like in that it used to be the other way around, to like have all these people invest in your dream, but now it's
right.
more about a couple of people or a
But
few and
It's
less
again,
gotten to
about
be
all of them.
greed now as
okay,
opposed
so
Yeah,
as
I
the end
sure.
I I
result.
I hear both of you,
Yeah.
right?
Right.
But guess what company has helped more people come out of poverty than any publicly traded company knowing? Berkshire Hathaway. So
Mhm.
if Warren Buffett kept Berkshire Hathaway private, there wouldn't be millions and millions of people that invested in them years ago that never have to worry about money.
I think though also, Robert, it goes back to that word, that little 5-letter word greed.
It is.
Because
It
I mean, I
totally
look
is.
at Costco and it's the same kind of thing where they, at least originally, he founded the company and he had the great investment, great benefits if you're an employee. Same thing with UPS. I remember
Yeah.
very distinctly some people
When
who
I was
who worked for
young,
UPS
when I
that
was
was
young,
the
that was
company to
the
work
place
for.
to get a job was UPS.
Right. or even down here, Disney too, the same thing, where I live. And, it's just now we're watching a shift in the corporate greed angle where things
Yeah.
get taken away. And of course, then the employee factor kind of lowers. The attitudes get worse and worse. And it's hard because you're still, in many cases, these greedy people at the top are trying to take more because of the way that the circumstances are, when all they need to do is to share the wealth.
Yeah. And
And
Well, it's
the
interesting because
younger
I
the younger self of me, regardless of what position a person takes,
yeah.
public, greed, not greed. Again, it's that example that we talked about. I don't remember what deal we did where the professor wrote, you know, 9 times 0 is 0, and
Oh
then he
yeah.
went all the way down to 9 times 10, and he did one purposely wrong. And then everyone, so my younger self, I would say, hey, when people are out there just 100% slamming shit, do yourself a favor and step away, because exactly the shit they're talking about is an exact opposite of a situation where a person's not greedy. So JP Morgan,
Mhm.
they said, wasn't even on the list of the top 50, and they're number one right now, JP Morgan. And people went, what do they do? They invest in their people. So right now, JP Morgan does three things that other companies are not doing. And they made it number one. Some people are going to look at it and go, we need to do that. And other people are going to go, I ain't doing it. So, number one, whatever job that you apply for, which by the way, we hear about the job market, right? The top 10 companies have 85,000 job openings. Wow, you don't hear that on the news, right?
Mm-mm.
Okay. JP Morgan, if you go down and apply, they'll do a test on you and then they will educate you to do the job. You no longer need a college degree to work for JP Morgan. Step two, if you have a criminal record, get your ass down here. We're looking for people that we want to employ. And if you have a criminal record, you can work for JP Morgan. Three, it takes too much money to train a person. So they train people and find out where they're good at, and they retrain them for a promotion. They retrain them to go into other areas once they are in the company for a little while. They'll find out where they believe that person will be better, and the company trains them. So all the top positions in JP Morgan in the last 3 years have been filled with people that already work for the company. So they
Makes you
named,
wonder about how college is right now, and should people go to college, or
yeah.
would it be better off now, like in your case, you would go to a trade school, or going back to the apprenticeship to learn a skill.
So
And
my
here,
first thought,
go
my
ahead.
first
I'm
thought
sorry.
with JP Morgan was, I'd like to know when this trend changed. And I wonder if they recently have added a new CEO in the last 3 to 5 years, because one individual can make a huge difference. I was telling my wife this, Terry, you guys realize that not even 20 years ago, if someone said, what's the worst country on the planet for crime? Colombia. Colombia is the worst country. The amount of people that die in that country, just kids, children, white moms. Colombia, do not go to Colombia. Do you guys realize that's the opposite today because of one leader? And here's what he did. He said, from this point forward, every child that graduates, male or female, that graduates from high school has to go into the police department or the military for 2 years before they get to go into college. And everybody go, what are you doing? And he says, when the cartel starts killing children of all of the people that live here, heads will roll. because now the mothers and fathers of those children will destroy the cartel. Now, they didn't destroy the cartel, but it stopped all the bullshit. Because now you have all these 17, 18, 19-year-old kids that are policing the city, that are running police. And that's when they said the cartel decided to move into other countries, even though they make the drugs there. We're not going to play around. And so he changed that. Now those kids go to college, they get good jobs. And now downtown Columbia, Medellin, and some of these big cities, it's safe downtown. When I went there, I had a police escort. When you pulled into a building or a restaurant, these people would come out and see if you had bombs underneath your vehicle, because the cartel back in the old days would just bomb every police station, every sheriff's station, every highway patrol. They would bomb the military. They would bomb the government offices, and everyone was scared. And so, this is the kind of stuff I would tell my younger self. Just because someone's extremely passionate about a belief that they're telling you, and they believe in their hearts of what they're telling you is true, don't fucking believe it.
I think that's just good advice in general to tell to say to your younger self.
Yeah.
And you see that in the movies too. You know, don't believe or don't do what you think you should do just because somebody else is doing it.
And when that the
And
old one, Matt, that we used to say to people all the time, well, Jimmy's doing it. Well, if Jimmy jumped off a bridge, would you jump off a bridge?
Yeah.
Maybe, Matt, maybe
yeah.
Terry and I never said that to you.
No,
Well, I had
but
my mom say
like,
that to me loads of times.
Money doesn't grow on trees. Where does it grow? It's like,
I was one of those people that I'm like, hey, everybody, let's go jump off the bridge.
yeah, you were.
So I was more that person. But I think, you're right. Like, there's a certain aspect to growing up and life in general where you have to start questioning like where you get your information and where you're getting your
Well,
thoughts
yeah,
and where you're
because
getting your
everything can't be
ideas.
bad, right, Matt?
Well, no, everything's
You
not
you could
bad.
talk
There's
to
a
you could talk to people, and I did this to a person. I won't mention their name because you guys know them. And
Mhm.
all I said to him was this little statement. I said, before we go any further, can you tell me something positive about fucking anything? And they go, what? And I go, don't you see the problem? I need you to tell me something positive about something. I don't give a shit what it is. And the person wouldn't respond. They were so offended that I go, you don't even realize that everything that comes out of your mouth is complaining about fucking something. And you wonder why you got a problem. Can you tell me something positive? So, man, unfortunately, you've been around me my whole life. And it's like,
my whole life.
yeah. So, you know, that's something that I would tell my younger self that I wish I figured out earlier in life, that I was always optimistic that I could find a way out of whatever situation that I was in.
Guilty.
I yeah. No,
Yeah,
I think that self-confidence is huge, and I think you get that from experience.
right.
Some people obviously didn't have a good thing, didn't have your experience, but at the same time they didn't have that I don't know, they never developed that confidence. Like even watching Kyle go off and do his traveling, right? Like I knew the moment you start making those decisions, you start gaining your own personal confidence.
Amen.
And even with what you're talking about with like where you get your information, once you start coming up with like points of your own and sharing them, and you see the reactions to those, then you start getting a little bit more confidence in yourself,
Mhm.
right?
Right.
Because then you're thinking about ideas that people are sharing, and instead of regurgitating the same idea, you're thinking about it and you're processing it in your own way and you're speaking about it in your own way. And I think that's why it resonates with some people, like even what we're doing here, Dad, what you're doing is because when you're excited about something, then you do think about, how do I describe this to others? How do I share this with others? Because I get that it's like totally lost on most people, myself included, when someone tells you just stop thinking so much, right?
Yeah.
Like obviously it's like
And
saying to
if you're
somebody don't be depressed, right? It's like
yeah. And if
Easier
you're
said than
going
done. Yeah.
if instead of just telling people to stop thinking, if you're going to go down rabbit holes, why don't you go down like Matt, one of the things that there's so many things that I'm always impressed with you and Craig as well is you become who you hang around. And you know, AI is going to destroy the world, including me. And the last 3 years, while it's trying to figure out how to be smarter than me before it destroys me in the world, it's going to take everything I have. Um, you know, there is a different take to this story. And what I love about what Matt does and Craig does is they're like me in their own in their own world that they create for themselves. That'd be another thing that I think that a lot of people would be, um, you do have a decision to spend a majority of your time, in the pursuit of learning relentlessly. That 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 when you get around people that are creating and they are making an impact and they are imaginators, like crazy imaginators, and you hang around these people and it really 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 changes your view of the world. It
Hmm.
really changes the view of the world, and it's not, you know United States is the worst country on the planet. The greedy people are going to steal
Hmm.
it
no, I'm
all.
not going anywhere else. I
Yeah,
love it here. Like
democracy.
Right.
that's
Yeah,
yeah.
democracy is gonna be gone if someone gets elected, and, um, I'm far from perfect. To say that I've never gone down a wormhole, in college, uh, one of the things I would tell myself is if someone comes to you and starts sharing books with you about Nostradamus, walk away.
that
So,
the
How do
you
you
know,
know that?
I I I can say through my life, I unfortunately had some QAnon moments myself, and it's like, wow, I remember going down that hole and just really, really, really have a sense of, you know, who gives a shit? Who gives a
it
shit?
definitely
I'm
doesn't
going
make your
to
life like
I'm going to do
yeah.
as little as possible, since they'll allow me to put everything on credit. I'm going to be a new person. I'm going to see how much I can be in debt before the world ends. It's like you really start doing some stuff you maybe shouldn't be doing.
Well, yeah, you make sense of it, and that's the thing is like every single one of us is kind of like living in our own world, and what we say to ourselves and surround ourselves with becomes our reality. So like, the more that you're in those communities of people that are inspiring you or have like ideas for the future that are positive, then you start to they start to resonate with you a lot more, and the pessimism like slowly but surely starts to like fall off, you know what I mean? Like I still
Right.
find myself
Hmm.
getting a little pessimistic when Iran starts shooting missiles at Israel or whatever, right? But
Yeah,
then
it's
I snap
spooky.
my mind back into it and remind myself that none of that's under my control, nor is it something that like I'm aware that the timelines for all of these things, that humans are really shitty at deciding the timelines of things. So it's either
Good.
World War III or it's nothing, right?
Hmm.
And it's either AI kills everybody or it's nothing. Like there's not that utopic other
Well,
conversation that
Especially
happens
what
very
we've been
rarely.
influenced by. Yes.
yeah, I think it would be cool for young kids that are sort of in that learned hopelessness, right? That, this has always been something that a lot of people don't do anymore. But, if you could spend some time around people that are in their 60s, 70s, 80s, and 90s, and just very simply ask them, you know, when you were young and my age, what was you scared of? Because we were doing monthly drills where I had to hide underneath my desk because North Dakota was going to be taken off the map when Russia launched nuclear warheads. Um, you know, if people don't understand what it was like to live during the Cold War, I can tell you it's probably a little different than what you're experiencing today. And I'm not saying again one's better or one's not. But if you talk to someone in their 90s, 80s, 70s, 60s, 50s, 40s, you're always going to find a group of people. And I'll just tell you what I think it is that people are really easily controlled when they're scared to death. The people that have the power, the money, the fame, the fortune, the people that have the power can really, really get away with whatever they want to if they can constantly let you know that, oh, by the way, if we all don't come together and find a way to keep the government in business, we're all going to be no money. The world's going to end. Um, I don't think this constantly comes up a couple of times a year for any other reason but us to think that we might need these people because who else is going to keep the government afloat? So you get a bunch of people in the 12th hour that we even are told, even though, they don't work, that they stayed up late till 4 in the morning on a weekend to make sure the government's not shut down. It's like, come on, man. It's like, we get this thing that just constantly happens, but still, what about the new group and the young group of people that get to hear this stuff first time? What are you telling me the government can shut down? No one gets Social Security. The post office is not working. Oh my God, they're shutting down the national parks. Yeah, they can really drive this point home. And that's another one thing I would tell my younger self is that, you know, there's some people that are making up shit and they're doing it for a reason.
Oh yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and it's easy. It becomes easier and easier with the internet. Like when you talk about talking to people that are older. I think one of the difficulties with this generation and in comparison with the others is that exponential growth in technology that we weren't mentally ready for necessarily, and we never had
Right.
conversations about. We still haven't really had conversations about it, because we're not even a generation really into it. So it's
Right.
like it's interesting when you can have conversations about, hey, does capitalism work here, or does the government work like this or that? When you have hundreds of years or thousands of years to look at certain
Great
aspects
point,
of
Matt.
us,
Great
but
Mhm.
point.
now we're in this place where not only did the constant news cycle happen to television, but now you have social media and things like X and things like Instagram and TikTok and all of these different services, Reddit, that are constantly bombarding you with how the world is or isn't, right? And those are all algorithmically
Based on
designed.
And
their
how
opinion.
maybe it should be because of the fake news.
Right, exactly. So like I think that's another one of those weird things is when you look at the statistics of like how eternally online the millennials and below are. That
Yeah.
a lot of us were born with the internet, especially the younger generations than the millennials. I was a late millennial. So a lot of the millennials are like in their 40s and stuff now. So I'm more of the younger one. But when you look at Gen Z and like the younger generation than them, uh, these are people that have been eternally online in such a way that their minds are not thinking the same way as somebody that's 70. They didn't
Yeah.
experience, going back to what Craig said of how important that first 7 years of your life is. Imagine what that 7 years is like when there's an iPad in front of you that entire seven
Oh
years,
my gosh.
Golly.
right?
And my
And
and yeah. I was gonna say
right.
my Susan's a teacher and she sees this all the time with the young kids that she's involved with
So you have
because they're so
lawmakers,
influenced.
right? You have lawmakers that are of the boomer generation and a little bit younger, maybe Gen X. And you see a lot of these people that have a complete and total disconnect from the technology that now is these kids are dealing with. So we're having conversations about who's supposed to use what bathrooms when kids are killing themselves faster than they ever
Mm.
have. because of social media and technology and all of these other
Oh,
aspects of
true,
their
man.
lives. So
Mhm.
it's like, hey, listen, when I was younger, yes, you had this cold scare of the Cold War, like the Red
Right.
Scare of the Cold War. At the same time, kids nowadays go on TikTok and are watching a massacre that happened like last weekend at, or a stabbing that happened at a mall or something. And this is like in their faces as they wake up and are going to
Golly.
school and doing things every day. And like we don't really have any concept for laws or ideas on how to fix those things. The people that are allowed to kind of dictate the laws are the people that are creating and making money off of it. And I love this joke that Bo Burnham had in his Inside special that's on Netflix, where he was like, maybe letting corporations with no oversight monopolize and commoditize your attention span and the attention span of children was not such a good idea. Like
Yeah.
maybe that
And we're
one kind of
seeing that
screwed
in
us up quite a bit.
yeah, we're seeing that with government regulation now, as it relates to the internet. You know, how many times have the owners of Meta and Twitter or X, however you want to say it, and Snapchat have been brought into congressional committees because now we are facing exactly what you're talking about, man.
Yeah, but the
Yeah.
lawmakers are asking questions to the TikTok CEO who's from South Korea about China. When
Right.
yes, there's investments from China in that, but at the same time, there's like such a disconnect from the people that are making the laws to how the technology works, and that has
They
run
don't they don't
rampant. Like
they
that's
don't
the
know it,
interesting
Matt.
difference.
I
Yeah,
think it's
how do I say this is an interesting question based off of what we're talking about here. How do I say advice to my younger self, which is in a way, in a sense, me going, hey, younger person, here's some advice that might help you. When I grew up with fucking MySpace and didn't grow up with 6 second short, 10, 15-second short videos that were 6 to 8 months away from anyone being able to create anything about. So
Or
like
let alone 3 TV channels and
I have
maybe
a TV. I
4
have
or
3
5
screens
that you
here. I have a
that's
screen in
all
every
you
room, a
had.
screen right here,
Yeah,
right?
all you had was the TV that had those channels in your area, and
Right.
then those 3 major networks where if the president went on the screen for his, State of
You
the
were
Union,
listening because there
you
was
got
nothing else
screwed.
on.
You couldn't walk away, you couldn't
Right.
watch anything else. And
right.
then the
Now it's the
movie
opposite. I
theaters.
have to go out of my way to watch the State of the Union because they're like,
Yeah,
we don't want to
exactly.
interrupt the broadcasting that's currently going on.
Hey,
But
Matt, isn't it crazy that Craig and I grew up where the biggest technology change for us was, wait a minute, you can record something
Yeah.
that w- you could
well,
you
Without
could
think
all
of
of
it
this
this
record
big,
way.
with
huge,
you
expensive
had a
equipment.
VHS tape. You could
Yeah,
actually record because back then there was three channels, and if you missed Dallas, you missed
missed
Dallas.
it. Exactly.
Right.
You had to wait for the rerun to come around if you were lucky that it didn't get canceled and then screwed the reruns.
Hey, you guys, if you don't mind, let me change the subject just a little bit.
Sure.
Um, when you think about talking to your younger self, what would you say to yourselves about taking risks and failing?
Oh my god.
Well,
For
I mean, it's one of those things that I'm still dealing with in just different ways, right? Like I think
guilty still, yeah.
it's so subjective that I'm realizing that it's like one of those questions that the more I try to answer it for myself, the more of a pain in the ass it becomes.
Yeah,
Because the things that I dealt with when I was a teenager were significant to me at the time because that's all I was dealing with. But
right.
now that I have the experience of that decade, almost 2 now, I now can look at it and go, "Oh yeah, those problems weren't that significant in comparison."
Do
But
you
it's
wish
because I have that. Go ahead, man.
going back, looking at your younger self? Um, it's funny. Do you guys see? I'm asking you the question instead of saying anything. It's like
Mhm.
it's like, um, how much more do you wish you would have challenged yourself and tried things,
Oh
even
my gosh,
though
yes.
even though you didn't like it, you didn't do good at it, and it ended up in a lot of people's eyes being failure, probably more you than ever. But, I think about people if they really thought about what they would say to their younger selves. Again, because of this series that I decided to do for Kyle, that I know that will help a lot of people. The first thing that he said is, "Oh my God, I should have did this years ago."
I think we all say that, Robert. I mean, there are times
Yeah,
where I would go back based on where I am now. And again, I know I talked about it earlier, uh, but if I had done this as opposed to this, what, I probably would have been well, I definitely know I would have been in a different situation than I am now.
right.
But, could it have influenced me in other ways? Yes. Could it have been a positive? Very likely. Could it have been a negative? Very likely. And based on all of that too, again, I'll go back. To me now, the way I look at it is it's a learning experience.
Yeah.
Because if it happens again, I will be able to say, "You know what? I'm going to I'm going to try it this time."
It's like
Even though
it's
it may
like
have been 20, 30 years ago that this occurred, but it's like, what would happen if I don't do it, I'm still where I'm at. If I do it, then it's like we've always talked about. There's going to be two results. It's going to either be it's going to work or it's not going to work. And if it's
right,
not going to work, then you know what not to do. But if it works, you know what to do, and you can continue to move forward. That's from the experiences that, looking back at my younger self, I can honestly say, could I have done it that way? Yes, I could have. I could have probably been better prepared for where I'm at now. Maybe I could have been in a much better position than I am now. Maybe I could have been in a much worse position than I am now.
Imagine,
And
imagine, imagine being 20 years old. So, what year were you guys in your 20s? Your 80s, 1980s,
yeah,
80s.
late
yeah,
80s?
yeah.
Imagine you're in your
I
20s and your
graduated in
80s,
I graduated
and
1980,
you think, oh
Craig.
man,
'78.
what am I going to be doing in my 60s? And then think of all the things that have come out and what we're doing right now, and try to guess in the 1980s that this is what you'd be doing now. And
Oh
then
my gosh. Yeah.
the only thing that you can give yourself advice for is like the shit that, like, even career wise, did I think that I'd be working with AI for the rest of my life? No. No, I thought I'd be
Right.
making movies. But at the
Right.
same time, now I get to do both of those things. But it's interesting because these different concepts and things exist when we're younger, um, of what we want to do and what we want to be, right? And I
Right.
think it's a lot easier now to take it a couple steps back and go, I didn't want to be a film director when I was a kid. I wanted to make things. I wanted to tell
Yeah.
stories. I wanted to
Hmm.
be a storyteller. That's really what I wanted to be. It didn't really matter what the medium was that I was goofing around with. I always gravitated towards that. And so now it makes it a lot easier, unlike some of the other people that are huge ad have huge admiration for film, which of course I do. Think of the
Right.
new version of what this is as a different medium to film. But you have all these people going, it's lifeless in comparison to real film. And it's like, that's, I remember them, I grew up in the same age when they were
Like
saying that about
opinion.
video games,
Oh,
right?
Yeah.
absolutely.
Like where they would be like, oh, okay, well, this isn't a real story, right? Like, it's a video game story. And then I'm watching Fallout on Amazon and The Last of Us on HBO, and I'm like, oh, Hollywood's run out of so many ideas, now they're stealing them from video games. Like,
Right.
they need video
Yes.
games now because their wells run dry for them, right? And
Dune.
so I always think,
They're
Dune is
trying to
another
get
one.
they're
Yeah.
they're trying
yeah,
to get it's obvious what they're doing. They're trying to get that audience that's not interested in them
well,
because
it's marketing
they
and it's
It's the
not
marketing and
creating.
popularity. Yes.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah, algorithms fucked everybody up quite a bit because the more that you see numbers, and this is what I love about AI, this is what I've said in interviews about it, right? Is it's like everybody always thinks to themselves, AI is going to get to the point where, okay, I want to make my own music, right? So, like, why would I listen to someone else's music when I could just make my own music, right? I could just listen to whatever I want to listen to. You're underestimating how bored you get of what you want.
Yes.
You're
Hmm.
underestimating
Yes.
how excited you get about something that you didn't know that you wanted.
Totally.
Oh,
And that
yes.
those elements of being a human being are so like unique to us and irreplaceable. So that's the issue with algorithms and data is all the data in the world could tell Netflix that this show will be successful, and it probably will be. But will it be loved? Will it be admired? Will it win awards? Will people remember it 15
Will it
years
be a
from now?
classic? Yeah.
Yeah,
An algorithm
exactly.
cannot tell those things. It can't. It can
Wow.
only tell you if people will watch it, but it can't tell if it's any good. It can't tell if anyone actually cares about it. So like
Right.
I
Hmm.
think that those interesting aspects are why you need to dive into those things, and that is some of the advice that I'd give. Is not that there's going to be a medium that you need to be in, but to refine those very human skills. Right?
Oh,
So now I'm
I
not
absolutely.
agree.
focusing so much on AI. I'm focusing on storytelling with writing and editing because those are two things that I can control and I have the most fun doing,
The-
right? I'm in a realization process that in the future, just because of the budget difference between making films and using AI, that I will not be able to control completely every element of a film's process, just like you weren't before, right?
right.
You are still at the adherence of the VFX team. You are still at the adherence of your cinematographer, of your actors. Even if you wrote the best screenplay in the world, you still have to get the team around to get that vision to come to fruition.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
I think that that's still going to exist with AI. It's just going to cost a lot less and you're going to have a lot more time to do it, right? Like
Right.
I sent that video to the Imaginators the other day. It blows my mind that Adobe legit is bringing Sora like right into Premiere, like right into
Saw
editing
that. Yes.
software. So it's like, oh, I don't even have to go to a website and prompt and bring it into editing. At some point, I'm just going to be able to sit here with a script on one screen and Premiere in the other and just make a film that way, right?
Hmm.
Because the competition, that's one of the things that I wish that, if you are young and you're watching this, the number one thing that I think that I would try to get through to you is that understand that failure is not the opposite of success.
It just means you
Failure,
couldn't find out
yeah,
that didn't work.
right.
Wasn't
Thomas
the right
Edison.
puzzle
Failure,
piece.
Yeah.
failure is the process of success, the process of joy, the process of happiness. And, you know, I blame the school system on this. So, some of you that are struggling with this, it's like, for everyone to take a test, we're not going to be equal at anything. We're all individuals. But yet, the teachers get to go out of their way and make sure that they tell everyone in the class who the A+ student is and what the F student is. You know what I mean? So there's a lot of things that are in our world that, for young people, you're programmed that, you know, what kind of loser are you and how worthless are you? If you're not an A+ at everything, that's fucking bullshit. You know what I mean? You have something, maybe you haven't discovered it yet, but you have something that makes you extraordinary over the masses. And when you find that thing that you love, not doing it correctly all the time is part of getting better at it and getting gooder and gooder and gooder and gooder and gooder and gooder. And, there was a video that I know, Matt, you just sent to me recently that was sort of a different spin on this 10,000 hours
Mhm.
to master something. And that was, when I watched that video and it said, listen, if you spend 15 minutes on something that you want to get better at, and you do that every day for a year, you're extraordinary. You're already in the top 2 or 3% of the
I'm
people that have
learning
ever.
that because
Oh,
Yeah.
like that
absolutely.
there's that one short that I shared and this guy said you want to beat your imposter syndrome, you want to beat your brain, make a bet with it. So what you're going to do instead is instead of procrastinating, instead of not doing it, you're going to make bets against your own brain telling you can't do it. So what you're going to do is go,
Right.
okay, I'm going to set something in my calendar, and this can be in any amount of time. I think it probably should be at least a month, but set in your calendar and then go, okay, now I'm going to start creating things. I'm going to give myself that 15 minutes a day. I'm just going to say, screw my brain telling me I'm not going to be good at this. I'm not going to, it's never going to amount to anything. It's going to take forever. And I'm just going to fall in love with the process of doing it. Right. I'm just going to fall in love with that singular process. And in that month or 3 months, come back to yourself and look at the stuff that you made in the beginning and look at the stuff that you made 3 months later. If it's not better, then you lost the bet. But the truth is that no person goes through that process that doesn't realize that it worked.
Right.
If you're serious, right?
Isn't
And you
that what
take the
Mr.
time to do
Beast
it.
said?
Yeah.
Exactly. If you're
Mr. Beast
serious
shared,
about it.
yeah,
You
he
know,
keeps
I don't know
his
if they
first video to remind him of where he started, and he's
Right.
improved every single
yeah.
time ever since. And I know that's something that you also teach, Robert, is okay, you got to do it. You got to start someplace, regardless of
I'm a
whatever it
living
is.
I'm a living example of it. I know that someone would tell me that I'm not the record holder of this, but I think that I'm a record holder of this. The number of videos that have been put online to YouTube, Facebook, every other thing, the number of videos that have been put online without a professional microphone. I bet you
We were talking about this
I
earlier.
I
That's
bet
funny.
you I bet you there's no one that has put up, you know, uh, probably 3 or 4,000 videos with tens of millions of views that just kept refusing to use a professional microphone. And
Well, I think that just goes
so
to show that you can put
so
a
I
lot
could
of
look at
thought.
I'm sorry, Matt. I could look
No, go
at
ahead.
all the videos that I did before I got this microphone as being mistakes, failures, unprofessionalism. I could do all that stuff. But for me, it was the process. It was, I see so many people that do incredible videos because of the content or the point that they're making, are making people laugh or entertain or emotionally. And they're still just using their smartphone. They're just picking it up and
Mhm.
crushing out videos every single day.
Believe it
And
or not,
and
the more production you have into your videos on TikTok, most of the time hurts you, doesn't help you because everyone's
wow,
so trained on you being recorded by your phone that it's almost like you, even if you had a whole background like I have, right? Not right now, but in general, they'll still put their phone up and shoot it from their phone just because that feeling connects. And this is what I was even sharing with the inner circle, or maybe it was the imaginators, about what platforms you're on and how important it is to understand the atmosphere of those platforms, right? That
right,
Mhm.
it's not like, oh, all content works everywhere. It's like, no, some people are in a group and they communicate differently, and you're going, hey, listen to me long form, and they're like, don't have the attention for that, don't want to,
right.
right? If you
I'm
can't
sure there
summarize
I'm
this in a
sure
minute,
there's
it's not interesting.
Yeah, I'm sure there's people that watch 3-hour movies that have a different like or feeling than the people that spend a lot of time on Pornhub. You know what I mean? It's like
Probably. I mean, that's the thing though, is that that's to me what's so interesting is that everything now has almost just become content and content creation. And
yeah,
one of the interesting things about that is I've seen a couple of video essays on this, because films almost are doing this as well, and TV shows. It's almost more about, going back to what we were talking about a little bit earlier, it's almost more about the moments that happen than it is about the whole story sometimes, because if you can get people to talk about it, that is the best
true,
marketing that you could ever have.
true.
Oh
So
gosh,
shock
yes.
value has now
Show me
become
the money.
right. Shock value has become so much more of a commodity now that you almost will see whole entire films that are running off shock value alone, right? They
Great
just need to be
point.
talked about. Or shows, right? Where it's like, oh, well, why is this scene here? And it's like, it's a scene here because people will talk about it if they see it, right? Like, it's just that type of thing.
And then at the
So
Great.
same time, when you see the ones that imitate that scene and it keeps getting imitated more and more and more and more, then it's like, Been there, done that. Forget this. Boom, click away.
I mean,
Yeah, it's
it's. Go ahead, Dad.
go ahead, Matt. Please go.
Well, I was just gonna say that there's always going to be like homages to different things, and I
Yeah.
think trying to avoid that stuff. That's one of those interesting things too that I would tell my younger self. Don't fear so much about being like everyone else. That's impossible,
Yes.
right?
Oh my
Like
God, yes.
that Donald Glover line is like you want to learn who you are the fastest you can and just be that to the 10th degree, like just be yourself completely because no
Right.
one can beat you at being yourself. So it's like realizing that the moment that I put a camera in my hand or the moment that I started making stuff that I was going to make it my way regardless, that it actually was impossible to imitate other people. Because I'm not them. So like I can only get close to their art. I can't make art like them. Um, and through that process is education, right? So like instead of trying to emulate them and feeling bad that I can't do it, be glad that they exist enough to inspire me to attempt and try new things. Like it's
Very good,
perspective that
Matt.
I would probably teach myself when I was younger on those types of things, especially, right? Like
Or
Yeah.
being more,
perspective was what I
yeah.
had huge problems with growing up, is like just how I perceived myself and like the things that I would accomplish was so much more involved based off of what other people saw them as and less about like
And how
what.
much we wanted to be like them instead of being ourselves, which is something that we need to always be embracing
Yeah,
because,
Yeah.
my two
if you
favorite.
copy somebody else, and this is in acting even as well,
Mhm.
if you copy somebody else, you're copying somebody else, but that's not the true authentic you that's coming into either the role in the case of acting or even with you as you are with others because people can tell. That's the
Yeah.
emotional side. AI will never, ever, ever get that. And that's where, we have that, I guess, superiority to AI is that the emotional side of things, what we as humans bring to the table, and that we want to connect with others. That's
Yeah.
so important when it comes to
Very
that.
Well,
important,
And
Craig.
yeah, yeah.
and that's one thing I would look back on my younger self and say, be more authentic, be more me, not be others, not be what others expect. Maybe in the beginning phase of my life, because that's when you're learning what the rules and the morals are for what you've been raised with. But then
Right.
you have to go out on your own and be who you are and interact with
Very
because
good.
you will always find people who appreciate you for being you.
Yeah, one of the things, Craig, that's awesome wisdom, is there's this thing I know that goes throughout the world too, that I would say to my younger self is having real incredible relationships are very fucking important. It's like this whole thing about, you know, I remember the first time that I heard this phrase and I went, "What?" And the whole concept was, we try to be individuals and we try to do all kinds of things to make our uniqueness more unique. And when you really look at the joy that you get from uncertainty, um, when a world basically tells us that it's certainty, not uncertainty. But
Yeah.
and it's crazy because it's like, God, going back to Craig and our days, is that it was a big, big deal to retire for a company for 40 years and get a gold watch. You know what I mean? That that you got into a job and you just stayed loyal to that job. And if I would tell myself, a younger self, is man uncertainty. I now know now that my life would be totally different if I would just consistently be willing to try more things outside of my comfort zone. And yeah, I can say, that's not for me. That's not for me. I don't see myself going further with that. But the number of things that I would consistently do because I feel a part of being alive is not achieving a vision, a goal, or imagination. It's the person you got to become to make that imagination out there. And it challenges you. And so, challenge and uncertainty is things that make you feel like you're fucking alive. It is when you're out of your comfort zone. This is pretty damn exciting. I don't know if I'm going to be good at it. I don't know if I'm going to like it. And who gives a shit? And you know, the world is so wrapped around, well, god dang, you quit that, and you're a quiet quitter. And it's like, today I would look at the younger generation of quiet quitters, is maybe what they're doing is because of their constant uncertainty of consistently quitting things allows them to find the thing that's going to give them joy and the journey for the rest of their life. You know, I really honestly thought I was going to be a mechanic for my entire life. So I sit there and I think, with the mindset that I had, the environment that I grew up in, if I didn't get hurt and get 9 months off and lose my identity, where the hell would I be?
Mhm.
Because I got all my identity, I got all my praise and recognition, I got all my certainty, my approval, everything was wrapped around me being a fucking mechanic. How do you how do you change? How do you change now if you don't have a life altering experience? And so when that identity was lost, um, I didn't have good relationships with fucking nobody,
Yeah.
because I was still too young and trying to figure it out. And so, man, I would tell my younger self, you know, learn to network, get around other people. One of my mentors said to me, hey, so when you finally get your knee healed, what are you going to do? And I said, well, I had this imagination of being a crew chief for a big racer, a racing company. And he went, would you do me a favor? I said, sure. He goes, do you know any crew chiefs? I know them all. In fact, Roger Penske employs 20 of them, because he had crew chiefs in NASCAR, crew chiefs in IndyCar, Formula Car, off-road trucks, anything that had a damn motor, there was crew chiefs, right? And he says, why don't you just go out to each and every one of them that you know and just ask them a simple question, which is sort of bizarre that we're on this subject. Is he said, with what you know now, about your current occupation, would you suggest for anybody else to get into it? And I decided to take the challenge seriously. He said he wanted me to talk to 10 of them and report back to him. 10 out of 10 said no. 10 out
Mm.
of 10 said no, because they get to come from a different perspective. This is their imagination that they've had their whole damn life. And so you sat down with them and it went, I don't get to spend any time with my family. I get to see them at 2 races a year, and it's the one that's closest to our home. I'm doing this shit 52 weekends a year. It's like, I didn't expect to spend this much time. And here's the other thing that people don't know about certain athletes. Certain athletes always have to go to work on Thanksgiving, Easter, Christmas Day, Christmas Eve, because the rest of the world are sitting on their asses with their family watching them fucking perform. See, that's the weekends they have to work, is when everybody else gets them off. No one ever takes the time to think about uh, how stressful that job was. They said to me, Robert, do you know anything about sports? I said, of course. He said, the team that was number last year in pro football, does the coach get replaced? And I go, wait a minute, it's usually like the worst five, the worst like eight. The coach knows his job is gone. He goes, where do they go after? I worked my way. I was high school assistant coach for college. I moved up as an assistant coach for pro football. Then I moved into the defensive coordinator, the offense coordinator, and then I got hired to be a head coach for this football team. What happens when they lose? What's your job after you fucking leave that. The high school doesn't want you. You're the coach of so and so team that didn't win a game this year. He goes, the same with crew chiefs. So I busted my ass to become a crew chief. And if our team, including the driver, doesn't get in the playoffs, my job is at jeopardy all fucking year. One mistake. Anybody makes a mistake on my team, I'm the blame. And you got hundreds of thousands of fans that know it's your fucking fault. Um, those 10 people were able to give me a perception that I no longer wanted to be a crew chief.
I
So,
mean, I honestly like similarly with me, Dad, with film, like it was very similar. Like I wanted to become a film director, and it came to the realization that the life that I would want would be more of like an author's life, like where I could be around my children and my wife and my family, and I wouldn't have to spend so much time away from them to fulfill those needs, like creating things and making things. And then on top of that, like most film directors are divorced. Most film directors have to go through insane levels of stress, similarly, where everyone's asking something of them. And then even at through all of that process, then you can get to the studio level and they just screw you around there too. Like you could actually have your art ruined by somebody else because you technically don't have full control over it and you never
Which
did
has happened how many times?
oh my
many
God.
times. So for me is like, okay, well maybe one day animation will be at the point where I could do it from my house. And then now maybe the whole thing is. So now I'm going, I just need to make enough money to get a nice house and a nice studio. And I can just
Mhm.
fly the people in that I need, maybe a run strip. I'll just fly the people in from LA that I need,
There you
record their
go.
performances, fly them back. I don't have to see anybody. I can go the Kubrick route. If you guys don't know, Stanley Kubrick, the guy that like made The Shining and stuff, he saw how Hollywood was, hated it so much, and he just moved to England. He was just like, "Yep, I don't want
Yeah.
to be around that anymore." And so that was my thing, right? Like I'm too nice of a person to sit in front of someone that's crying and going, I just can't do this anymore, and say, no, my idea is important enough that you have to. You have
Ah.
to go through this for me. And it's like, it was always a
Well,
hard thing
well,
to wrap
again with
myself around.
again the thing with the competitiveness, I've had a lot of people that, you know, I think you both know this about me. I'm very intentful and purposeful on the way that I want my life. Very, very intentful. And you know, a lot of people say money doesn't buy you happiness. I know one thing does, freedom.
Mm.
Freedom.
Mhm.
And so, when you can get up each and every day, not waking up for any other reason than you're just done sleeping and you want to get up. And then you get to plan your whole entire day, what you're going to do, how you're going to impact, how you want the world to see you. And you don't really care anymore about what anybody thinks about anything. It's like that's another thing I would tell my younger
I was
self.
just
It's
gonna
like,
say,
yeah,
Mm.
it's like, yeah, wow. And then it's weird. If someone would have told me this little riddle when I was young, which I think they did. I just didn't have the ears to hear, which was, figure out what gives you the most joy. Really, really keeps you creative, makes you feel alive. And that very thing will turn into your freedom. And we're wired where, listen, doing what I love does not make me money. Okay, what do you love? I love doing nothing. Um, okay, you win. Congratulations, you're a winner. Let's talk about
I that's
let's
always one of those things is like anyone that says that they like doing nothing, I think that that's untrue because I've
I agree.
similarly where I've
yeah,
heard people say, like I told you that one therapist that said just sit down in a chair and stare at a wall for 30 minutes. just be
Right.
with your thoughts for 30 minutes and how hard that is for people to do, you like something because you're entertaining yourself with something in those 24 hours, right?
But that comes
Like,
that comes back to all the stuff we've been talking about today. It's
sure.
like when people say, "Oh, money doesn't buy happiness." Well, it once you buy the things for yourself that you thought you wanted that would give you joy and you find out it didn't, and then you
Mhm.
started buying, stuff for your family that you thought would give you joy and it sort of did for a little bit. And then people say, "Well, if I won the lottery, I'd travel the world." Um, Done that. Um, I would love you to travel to the point where you say, "I'm done. I don't like
Mhm.
doing this. I'd like to be comfortable in my own bed and be, be able to do what I want to do, just relax." So it's always fun to be able to travel enough where you don't want to travel anymore. You know what I mean? And be around things that make you comfortable and loved and whatever. And then, oh my God, there's another level. What if you could make enough income and have enough freedom to actually make an impact in other people's lives? And then you get joy out of that. So when people hear sometimes the way that I treat my family, they think that I'm spoiling my family because they can't understand it. They don't understand that that's a selfish thing I do for myself. So me and Matt have always had conversations about this, that the way that I treat my family is very selfish of me, but I don't have a lot of people complaining.
Right. Well, I
And
feel
that's why
like
you
too it
say freedom is so important to
right.
you. I mean, as opposed to the money. I mean, yes, I mean, how many of us wanted to win the lottery, enjoy that freedom, imagine what it is that we want to do where we had not, or imagine what you want to do and do it without having to worry about money. What cars would you have? Where would you go? What things would you want to do? And I think that's what a lot of people get confused with. It's like
Right.
and especially it's like, okay, yes, would you like to have a mansion or would you like to have a comfortable home that you can go back to and enjoy that as opposed to
I
uh
like to have both.
well, okay, fine.
And that's another
But
thing I learned from
yeah.
my younger self, Craig, not to interrupt you because you're right on, is like this whole group of people, don't we always crack up? You know what they say? Like
Oh
there's a bunch
gosh.
of
Yes.
freaking people out there with t-shirts on that say they. And it's always they are always trying to get you to pick one or the other. I'll never forget. Uh, I want it all and I want it now. There's some songs that
Yeah.
all of a sudden come out, and it's like, hey, I would like a small house in the country. All right, well, I'd like a big house on the ocean.
Mhm.
Uh, it's neat to be able to go, I didn't like that. I didn't like this. It's funny to hear even the youngest people like Mark Wahlberg, all of a sudden just uproots his whole entire family and moves them someplace. Well, why should you do that? Because he can. Oh, wait
Right.
a minute. I can't. Then change that. But I really want to come off on that point about um, really understanding, and I would like to know who this is not for as I say this, um, but really, really understanding that, there's 16 personality traits. We are all unique with our DNA, the way that we were raised and our environment, our culture, our traditions, um, who we learn from. It's like, golly, if you just really understood how important other people are in your life, because I really, really see people in this day and age that, like Matt said, there's people that may watch this video recorded, and they're going, Robert, you don't get me, and you never will, because I had an iPad in my lap the entire time I can remembering, and those things have structurally changed the way I am, and guess what? You can learn to me communicate. The thing that I love most about figuring out personality traits is my frickin' fascination again of my relentless learning. I want to know how these other 15 people think, how they react, what do they hear? That when I realized that I was responsible for my perspective that I was giving somebody else. See, that's just the opposite. So it's like, here's my thoughts. This is what I'm saying. This is what I believe. You need to get on my bandwagon to the total polar opposite. What's the polar opposite of everything? All of a sudden, when you realize, wow, there were people raised in a certain environment around this group of people that does not share your thoughts, your beliefs, anything. And I think I brought this up on one of our other podcasts. When I seen that girl that her and her sister escaped North Korea and don't understand what the concepts of freedom is. How would you know if you never knew? She
Mhm.
never understood the concept of happy. She never knew the concept of not being hungry. She never knew the concepts of a word called safe. What would it feel like to be safe? What would it feel like to have peace? What would it feel like to be loved and protected? Oh my God. See, because as soon as you talk about this girl that has a little bit of imagination and went, now that dad's gone and they arrested him, we have no more money for no more food. And she looks at her sister and says, I don't know why I think that, but there's a light that direction. And I just feel like there's things there that are for us is where the light is. Well, they found out what going to the light is. It's called torture, human trafficking, being taken advantage of. So now you leave this world that you don't understand and you're going toward the light and it gets worse. So now you're eating a little better, but you constantly are having sex with strangers. It's like you don't have any family. You're constantly being beat up and abused. It's like you guys hear this girl's story, and then all of a sudden she's at the right place at the right time. And these people that do human trafficking and rescue people, her and her sister got rescued and brought to the United States. And all of a sudden she gets to hear these words for the first time, and she also gets to experience the meaning of these words. So even though we've been on this really weird thing about what would you say to your younger self, like Matt's already brought up, that Hannah brought up to me, what are some things that you can change about yourself right now? And what would you say to your future self? Instead of saying, nothing's going to get better, I'm a loser, no one cares, no one gives a shit. You got to learn to ask for help and get around people that might have a little different perspective than you. And so when all of a sudden I started realizing that everything that came in my out of my mouth, that I was responsible for the perspective they heard, not that they needed to see it my way, that what I wanted to share with them, that there was a word called compassion and a word called empathy, and a word called love, regardless of where it was. So as soon as I understood that there were people that didn't experience life the way I could, and that I could help them understand their world for who they are and the way they were brought up and the things that they had to get them to question, question everything. Because the sad thing that I hear about most people nowadays is they really don't see themselves being anything other than who they are right now. So I'm not good looking enough. I'm too weird. I'm not smart enough. I don't have any skills. Um, no one gives a shit, because there's one common theme that we hear about these violent people that act out. I'm alone. No one understands me. No one gives a shit. So what's the worth of living? Because no one ever took the time to reach out to them and make them understand that they're okay, that other people have these awful fucking thoughts all the time. It's like, I remember the first time that someone shared with me, hey, those thoughts that you have in your head, yeah, everyone has them. I questioned it immediately when someone said, listen, those crazy thoughts that you have, yeah, everyone has them. I was going like, no, they don't. No, they don't. And to think that all I did was get around a group of people that started expressing the way they felt about certain things. I was going, holy shit, I'm not the only weirdo on the planet. There's other freaking weirdos that think like this, feel like this, wonder why things are not like this. And that would be the biggest thing I would say to my younger self. Closing this out would be, man, you don't know what you don't know. You have There's people out there that think like you, feel like the same things that you like, and there's nothing better in the world than being around a community of individuals that feel like they're misfits from Misfit Island. They find out that other people are weirdos just like them. And now this is a community where we all get to uplift each other and not beat each other up for being so fucking different when every one of our DNA is different. So I really get how people get mixed messages in the world. And I'd like to be the kind of person that they would like to be friends with, that they'd like to be around. And I know that's probably weird, but I probably will die having the optimistic feeling that I myself and the people that I surround myself around, like Matt and Craig, that we can make a little difference for a lot of people. People keep saying all the time, I can't make a difference. But everyone that made a difference, someone made a difference in their world. And I hope hanging around and watching our stuff that would do it for you. I hope that this podcast is giving you a little bit of hope, a little bit of thought that, maybe if I didn't think all the stupid things that I thought, that maybe there is an opposite way of thinking. And that's all my mentors taught me. All they taught me was, Robert, what if this is not the way it is? Just what if you're wrong? I was like, hey, I was told I'm dyslexic. I didn't have a mom and dad. I hung around the wrong people, ended up in prison. My life is over. No one employs felons. But yet, if you're optimistic, you'll hear that JP Morgan is the number one company right now because they hire those people and they train those people and they internally promote those people. So, Mr. Rogers said in the final word, look for the helpers. Look for the helpers. So thank you, Matt. Thank you, Craig. I love you guys very much.
Love you. That was a great way to end it, huh?
Oh my gosh, absolutely. To put a wrap on this podcast. And of
I,
course, you can follow Robert Hollis at roberthollis.com. Also, if you'd like to join our exclusive communities, the Inner Circle and Imaginators, you can join us by going to roberthollis.com/join to register. There'll be lots of great exclusive content, and you'll be able to participate in all our special events for both of those communities. Please don't forget to like and share this video on YouTube and share it with others as well. It will help us grow our community and reach those with ears to hear. And thank you and shout out to executive producer Matt Hollis, fellow visionary. Bless you, my friend. Thank you so much for being our foundation. And of course, Robert Hollis, what an amazing share today. And thank you for being the GPS to success that you are, and the guide to everybody. And thank you for joining us today. My name is Craig A. Jackman. Thank you so much for taking time out of your busy schedule to join us here on Unlimited Wisdom. Until next time, please be good to yourselves, be cash, and bye bye.
Thank you, everybody. Thanks for watching. Thank you
Thanks,
so
Matt.
much.
Thanks, Craig, the
Love
hostess
you,
with the
Dad. Love you,
motion.
Craig. Thanks,
I,
guys.
Love
lo-
you,
I love
Matt. Love you,
masterminding
Robert.
with you guys. You're awesome.